Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. This week, we're talking about jet lag. Now, I've had a few clients and friends traveling, and they've returned talking about jet lag. Then, with today's episode about energy, it felt like a fitting topic. So that's this week's Nutrition Nugget bonus episode. And I think many of us are informally familiar with jet lag as like when we have a hard time sort of adjusting to a time zone when we travel. But it's actually considered a circadian rhythm sleep disorder.
I'm like,
I know, right? So like we all know it to be like a temporary experience. So like it was just interesting to me and frankly news to me when I was looking at this stuff that it qualifies as a sleep disorder.
oh wow. Well, we're traveling soon, of course. You know, we travel a lot. So this is going to be good. I'm excited about this. I'm excited to learn about this so that it doesn't happen to me.
Yeah, perfect. This is a good one for you. So recognize, though, not everything we experience is actually jet lag. There is also such a thing as just travel fatigue. So that looks more like it could still be tiredness and headaches, but travel fatigue is more because of the like physical toils of travel.
Sure, not eating right. And yeah, your schedule's a little off. You're not really hydrated, all that stuff.
Exactly. But the technical diagnosis of jet lag requires travel across 3 or more time zones. But then it also is so dependent, like person to person. Like some people may notice an impact, some people won't. Some people it's more dramatic than others. But it's essentially just the mismatch between our body's internal clock and the time zone that we're located in. So it is pretty common, although what people experience can be different and the severity of the symptoms can be different, as well as how long it lasts can be different person to person. Typically, it can take about a day to a day and a half for your internal clock to synchronize with the time zone you're in. There is some research, according to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, that it could last anywhere from a few days to a few weeks, which is that thing made me think of like daylight savings, because daylight savings, it's only an hour, but it can really mess with us for like longer than jet lag.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what you call that, but I still put it in this category. So symptoms of jet lag may include insomnia or challenges sleeping at night, feeling sleepy during the day, headaches, challenges concentrating. It could even impact like physical performance, not just mental performance, stomach upset. So that might even be, you might have reduced appetite, nausea, constipation, symptoms of irritable bowel, extreme tiredness during the day or like fatigue, mood changes, or what I call just like being cranky, right? Or irritable. And then even just feeling off, like just not like yourself, is even a symptom of jet lag.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what makes something a symptom more or less severe certainly depends person to person. It can also depend how many time zones we're traveling. So often the more time zones we're traveling through, you know, or that we're leaping, the more severe the symptoms, because it's a bigger jump for the body. But a lot of medical experts tend to say that flying eastward may cause more severe jet lag symptoms than flying west, which actually makes sense because like it's easier to stay up a little later than it is to like force yourself to go to bed earlier to adjust.
Yeah.
So that tracks like logically to me. And then the other sort of ironic or not so ironic thing is that even just things that are inherent in travel can exacerbate jet lag. So sitting for a long time, lack of oxygen, which we have, right? Decreased air pressure, dehydration, All of these things happen when we're traveling. And, so that's sort of like, okay, great. Not only does this cause it, but it also exacerbates it. What time you arrive at your destination can impact jet lag too. So some studies show your age can impact your experience of jet lag. If you have poor sleep before traveling, it might increase your chances of jet lag or even increase the severity of symptoms, and significant levels of stress before traveling, because the stress already sort of disrupts our internal clocks. And then also, as we talked about in this week's episode, caffeine and alcohol can impact the brain and hydration, and then therefore impact jet lag. Now, for most of us, it's a temporary and occasional experience. For those who are frequent travelers, though, like pilots, flight attendants, a lot of business travelers too. Like I have a bunch of friends who are all consultants and they're traveling all the time. Basically, for people who are constantly changing time zones, or if your circadian rhythm is consistently out of sync, we end up with sleep challenges. And that can also contribute to diabetes, depression, some cancers. So I would say go back to our episode. It was called Circa Your Circadian Rhythm. And you can look more at the impact of what happens when we have prolonged circadian rhythm disruption, when all our clocks aren't moving together. But so it's a diagnosis, jet lag, but there isn't a cure, which I'm sure there's research and money into somebody figuring out how to cure it. But better than that, as we all know, right, through our lifestyle and choices that we make while we travel, there's a lot that we can actually do to minimize it and support our body's ability to adjust.
Right.
The number one thing we can do is use sunlight to our advantage. So when you land, get outside, get sunlight in your eyes. Better to land earlier in the day so we get that light. Although I suppose it depends what direction you're traveling. But so we talked about this in the circadian rhythm episode, but light is actually the only environmental cue that can reset the clock. And it does so relatively quickly. So when you land, get outside into the sun, and the quicker you adjust to the destination's time, the lesser the symptoms of the jet lag. So maybe that also means let's be careful napping, right? We want to go to sleep at an appropriate time that night. If you can sleep on the plane, that can sometimes help us adjust faster. But I would caution with like sleeping pills or, whether it's melatonin or like pharmaceuticals that make you sleep, because they often have more of a downside than an upside when we're only sleeping for a couple hours on a flight. Like most flights aren't long enough to give you the number of hours recommended when you take those kinds of things. And then we can land and feel even more groggy than if we didn't take them. To support the digestive piece, even like for a day or two before you travel, like let's just not have new foods. Let's stick to things our body knows. Eat healthful choices, maybe eating a little lighter. So fruits and vegetables, clean, lean protein, rather than heavy, sugary, calorie-rich, fatty snacks, both during travel, before, and, when you land. Again, that also goes back to this week's whole episode on energy. Also, as we talked about in this week's episode, dehydration can exacerbate. So think lots of water, maybe consider like a multi-mineral when you land, because we also know from other episodes, hydration is more than just water, right? We need minerals. But then be careful with your alcohol and caffeine, before a flight, in the air, because those things can exacerbate the dehydration. Maybe get up and walk around while you're on the plane. You could even, while you're on the plane, like breathe deeply, right? Roll your feet around, roll your ankles, turn your head, twist a little bit in your seat. Like, obviously, we want to be respectful of the people around us, but just some movement so that we're not just like stagnant. I'm a big fan of the movement piece in general. Like, exercise is one of my top tips for adjusting to a time zone. It helps us with the oxygen piece. It helps us with blood flow. It helps us, even all the elements. It's really supportive. So if you're in a new place and you land, like do the walk outside, you get the movement and the light exposure. I'm a big fan of exercise before getting on the plane too. Some people think I'm certifiable, but there's a reason for it all. And then when you land too, like plan your trip too. So when you land, like those first couple days of the trip, like give yourself some buffer so that you can acclimate to the time, but also plan activities so that you're inclined to like be active and get moving rather than just like go to wherever you're staying and sleep. You know, like have commitments, but reasonable commitments. And then there's a piece in the literature that talks about like, okay, so it says, if you're traveling west for like a day or two before your trip, go to bed an hour or two later than you normally do. If you're going to be traveling east, go to bed an hour or two earlier than usual for like 2 days before your trip. To which I'm just sort of like, yeah, in an ideal world, maybe, but like, that's probably not happening. Yeah, that's not happening for me. But that gives us a lot of things that we can do sort of before, during, and after travel to help our body adjust. I think if symptoms persist for more than a few days, you may want to consider calling a healthcare provider or looking for a sleep specialist. If it's either extending for a lot longer, or if symptoms are getting worse or sort of turning into things that aren't necessarily symptoms of jet lag. But that's the scoop. Jet lag. It's actually a sleep disorder, usually short term. There's a lot that we can do. Well, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jen Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I'm at Jen Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Send a message. I want to hear your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me. You'll also find details for Salad with a Side of Fries live happening July 25th, 2024. Melissa, thank you again for being here.
Thanks, Jen.
Absolutely. I love chatting with you.
Yeah. That was fun.
Good. And of course, friends, if you're not already, join the membership by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. This shows your support for this podcast, this community. Most importantly, it supports your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the grilled pesto chicken and tomato kebabs and 10% off some of my favorite supplements for balanced energy, including those coffee alternatives. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.